When someone vanishes, we search for answers in timelines and technology, and as an astrologer, also in the sky. And today we are going to be looking at the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers, who went missing out of Hendersonville, Tennessee on February 25th, 2024. He was last seen with his mother at the Texas Roadhouse. She said that they left the Texas Roadhouse, went home, and approximately 15 minutes later, Sebastian took out the trash. So we're going to talk about that. Sometimes the chart doesn't give us all the answers. Basically, what a chart does, a birth chart or an event chart, it shows us where pressure points are. And what stands out the most in the astrology of the moment when he left the roadhouse, the planet that rules the entire situation is Mercury, a planet that is always dual, always representing more than one path, more than one version of events. And according to reports and video, Sebastian left the roadhouse after eating dinner and allegedly returned home. And not long before 7 p.m., Sebastian took the trash outside. A neighbor's ring camera captured what appears to be a figure near that time, a shadow, a silhouette. And according to Sebastian's father and neighbors, the footage is too grainy to clearly identify that that is Sebastian. And this is where the uncertainty begins. Did Sebastian make it home? Or are we only seeing a shape that we want to believe is him? This is why the timeline remains suspended between two narratives, two possibilities, and that duality is reflected strongly in the astrology. And look, astrology isn't about assigning guilt. It's about understanding conditions, psychological, emotional, and environmental stress points that surround a moment in time. When we look at the transits active during the window of Sebastian's disappearance, what we see is not calm energy. We see symbolism associated with confusion, domestic instability, and disrupted routines. Mercury governs movement, short trips, communication, siblings, transitions, and in medical astrology, it represents the lungs. Mercury is a dual planet. It naturally represents more than one option, more than one route, more than one version of events. So, astrologically, Mercury being emphasized during this time mirrors the exact question people are asking. Did he make it home? Did he go somewhere else before coming home? Mercury does not point to a single outcome, it points to multiple possibilities existing at once. And because Mercury was in Pisces, the sign of fog, invisibility, distortion, separating those possibilities becomes even harder because Pisces dissolves clear boundaries between inside and outside, safe and unsafe, seen and unseen. And what deepens this symbolism is that Mercury, the chart ruler, and Neptune were both activating Sebastian's fourth house of home, with mom, with family, and emotional foundations. In forensic astrology, Mercury and Neptune activity taking place in the fourth house correlates with domestic instability, emotional overwhelm, or situations where reality becomes distorted during family crisis. And this doesn't point to intent, it points to impaired judgment, confusion, environments where decisions are made under emotional strain. It's the kind of energy associated with moments when things quietly unravel behind closed doors. And at the same time, Mercury was also connected to the sixth house. And the sixth house is about daily routines, vulnerability, circumstances we can't control. This suggests that whatever occurred or didn't occur is tied to something ordinary, a normal task, a familiar moment, and not something that outwardly felt dangerous. Hygeia in astrology represents not only personal health, but also public safety and protective environments. She is about world health, and Hygeia was in Pisces, sitting at the same exact degree of Sebastian's natal Uranus in the fourth house of home. Uranus represents sudden disruption, video, groups. The fourth house represents home. Pisces dissolves stability. And so, together, all of this is pointing to safety of home, safety with mom, being interrupted unexpectedly in what should be a protected space with mom. Again, I'm not describing wrongdoing. I'm just describing the unstable conditions that were present during this period of time. And Hygeia was opposing a cluster in Virgo, the moon, Juno, and dark moon. Virgo governs routines, neighborhoods, and everyday life, the kinds of settings where danger isn't expected. The moon represents emotional shifts and changing circumstances. And at this time, the moon was in the first house, traditionally associated with changes of fortune and personal direction. So during this period of time when he leaves the Texas Roadhouse, the moon in Virgo in that first house is showing a change of direction. So that leaves the question is did he even make it home? Juno represents a committed relationship, whether that be legal or moral obligation that has to do with contracts, duties, responsibilities. And the dark moon is associated with disordered aggression or hidden aggression, situations where tension or instability exists beneath the surface, even if it's not outwardly visible. In forensic astrology, Virgo under stress can reflect a psychological pattern where someone feels compelled to, quote, fix, end quote, a situation, restore order, or act out of a sense of duty, even when those actions are misguided. Another major investigative signature in this missing event chart is the fifth house, the house of children, the house of education, and authority over young people. Mars in Aquarius was conjunct Venus and Pluto in that fifth house. Mars represents force and decisive action. Venus represents attachment and values. Pluto represents power and irreversible change, having to do with groups because they were all in Aquarius. This could be about homelessness. It could be about a group home. It could be about a group decision, a group task. Because when these planets combine in the house of kids, forensic astrologers associate this with intense emotional dynamic, control issues, high stakes decisions that are affecting a young person's life path, often connected to schools, behavioral management, and authority conflicts. I'm not describing a crime. The law enforcement has already said that this is a criminal investigation. I'm just describing the pressure surrounding decisions being made for a child rather than with a child. And that same Mars, Venus, Pluto triple conjunction was squaring Jupiter and Taurus in the eighth house. Jupiter rules the law, courts, judges, religious institutions, immigration, and long distance. The eighth house governs crisis, things that are hidden, investigations, matters that are being handled behind closed doors. Hard aspects between these planets often correlate with legal complexity, delayed justice, or institutional systems becoming involved in deeply personal matters. Astrologically, this is not a signature of a small or quickly resolved situation. And we can see the evidence of that. All of this was occurring while Mercury in Pisces was squaring Pallas in Sagittarius. Pallas is the investigator. She represents pattern recognition and the search for truth. In Sagittarius, Pallas expands the scope, to long distances, courts, belief systems, religious indoctrination, immigration themes, and even air travel. This aspect with Palace suggests prolonged investigations and questions that may stretch far beyond the immediate neighborhood. In forensic astrology, Mercury in Pisces is considered a particularly complex placement because Mercury is in the detriment. It's in a fall while in Pisces, meaning logic, clarity, rational planning are weakened. And in crime charts, this placement often correlates with unclear statements, misleading information, emotional or irrational decision making, and situations where reality becomes difficult to verify. And because Pisces is ruled by Neptune, Mercury here can symbolize smokescreens, narratives that shift, details that dissolve, and communication that obscures rather than clarifies. And this brings us back to the ring camera footage, a shadow, a silhouette, something that appears to be there but can't be confirmed. And that is pure Mercury and Pisces symbolism, presence without certainty, visibility without clarity. And so the astrology is mirroring exactly what investigators in the community are facing: unresolved ambiguity. Within 2 weeks of Sebastian Rogers going missing in Hendersonville, Tennessee, authorities classified Sebastian's disappearance as a criminal investigation. And this symbolism is associated with legal escalation and formal investigative processes. This shift tells us that law enforcement also recognized that this was not simply a case of somebody wandering off. And so I want to be clear: astrology is not going to say who did what and when, but it does give us a timeline when we compare it to a birth chart like Sebastian Rogers. I'm not placing guilt on anyone. I'm not accusing anyone without evidence. The evidence that I am seeing, though, is based on psychological and environmental conditions that are shown in the chart. There was an emotional overload, distorted judgment, domestic instability, the kinds of pressures that surround moments when tragedies unfold. And that distinction matters. And so, in closing, I just want to say that at the center of all of this isn't the birth chart or the event chart. What is at the center of all of this is a child who deserves to be found, a family and community who deserve answers. And sometimes, just sometimes, astrology is going to reflect the moments in time that are saturated with confusion and unstable conditions. And this chart was heavy with confusion, crisis, and unstable conditions. And if you have any information whatsoever that could help investigators find Sebastian Rogers, you are urged to call 1-800 TBI Find, go to your nearest consulate, call your local FBI. And if you don't have any information, what you can do to help bring Sebastian home is to talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, show Sebastian's flyer. Let people know that Sebastian is missing. All right, guys, until my next video, peace out.